Hello and welcome to KhaleejTimes.com. My name is Anamika Chatterjee and today I'm with Avni Doshi, the Dubai-based writer whose debut novel has made it to Man Booker longlist. Congratulations, Avni.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can you describe that first moment when you were told that you're receiving this? You have been featured in the longlist. Can you revisit that moment?
Yeah, it was just a few days ago. I was completely surprised. My editor called me before the news was made public, and the first thing she asked me was, "Are you sitting down?" So I knew it was some big news. So I sat down, and she told me that I was on the long list. And my first reaction was tears. I started to cry. It was difficult to believe. I think when you've been writing by yourself for so long, and writing is a very solitary occupation, so you can go years sometimes without showing anyone your work.
Perhaps it's too soon to talk about it, but how does something like this change the course of a career, of a writer's career?
Well, definitely there's a lot more pressure. So I'm not sure. Sometimes it can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes, I can imagine that there are some writers that find it difficult to write again after having, won an award and or being longlisted for an award and having that kind of scrutiny put on your work. But I think in general, it's a real blessing. There are so many amazing books coming out from all over the world every day. And it's really difficult for a young writer, a debut author, to get noticed, to get attention. So I'm very aware that I should be, grateful that I'm getting some notice, and that the press has been really kind to cover the book and to review it.
How did becoming a mother, in fact, you delivered 2 weeks ago, right?
Yes.
How did it change the way you looked at the mother's character in the book?
I don't know if it changed the way I looked at her. Perhaps I had a little more empathy for the mother character. I think, it's easy when you're a child to blame your parents for everything. When you're a mother yourself, you realize that you're kind of doomed to failure. You can do everything possible with the best of intentions, and you can, put your child at the center of your life. But at the same time, you can mess up and you can fail, and you can be a great mother, but maybe not be the mother your child needs. I think each child is so different, the way each human being is so different, and each individual has their own needs. And, so I'm constantly aware that even though I think I'm doing my best, my children will have a different perspective. And they may turn around in years to come and say, you messed up here and you messed up there. And it's very possible that I will have. And I think as a parent, I've learned a different kind of humility that I didn't probably have before.
Now, the book has been praised unanimously, but there was one criticism that came from a certain gentleman who said that the male characters were almost peripheral. Yeah. So, can you elaborate on that?
I think it's interesting because I think this is a kind of criticism that could only be leveled at a writer who's writing about women and who's probably a female writer. And so I guess this criticism came from a place where that individual just expected to see himself in any work of art. And I think that's not really, to me that shows a kind of privilege from the person who leveled that criticism at me. I think obviously, he's probably read mostly work by men and mostly work about men. And the men probably looked a lot like him, acted like him, spoke like him. And so he was very comfortable in that space. And I assume that maybe it's difficult to read and think and empathize from a different position.
What are the challenges of being a professional writer?
I think the biggest challenge when you're a professional writer is monetary, because writing doesn't pay very well. And so either you have to have, a day job where you're making enough money to support yourself, or you have to be born to rich parents, or you have to marry well. So, one of those three things has to happen. I've been told so many times by, writers that have been doing this longer than me, that not to expect, that I'll be able to really support myself through my writing, because that is such a rare thing. It's very few people that can really do that. So yeah, that's my advice to struggling writers.
You wrote the last draft in the UAE, right?
Yes.
As
In this house.
really, as a writer, what sort of space does UAE offer you in terms of ideas?
In terms of ideas, I think there's an aesthetic in the UAE that suits my style of writing. My style of writing is kind of a little pared down. And I think here there are these, of course, there are these beautiful fancy buildings and shopping malls and all kinds of things. But there are also these spaces in between that are just kind of deserted and that are almost, they have a sterile quality to them. And I think those are the spaces that, for me, kind of aesthetically speak to my writing style. I don't know moving forward how my writing style may evolve, but at least with this particular book and this character's voice, I think there was definitely something about this place that was useful.
Now, the pressure to be on the shortlist.
I'm really so grateful to be on the long list. I really didn't expect that I could ever be on a long list of the Booker. It's not even something I would have allowed myself to dream about. So I think, the short list would just be kind of an extension of that dream, but I'm already kind of floating at the moment, and I'm quite thrilled and happy to have even reached this place. So I'm sure, and I know everyone's been so wonderful. I've been getting messages from India. I've been getting messages from people here that they're rooting for me and that it would be the best thing in the world if I could be shortlisted or if I could win. But I'm honestly not taking that much pressure on myself. As I said before, I have 2 little babies, so I have more pressure from them than I could have from the entire, the entire lineup of Booker judges.